Caffeine. Yes, it's true that while you snooze, you lose all sorts of photographs. After all, if you're asleep or not paying attention, there's no way you can take a photograph. In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about some photographs I took when I finally woke up and was no longer snoozing. So, here's to waking up, concentrating on a little bit of photography instead of sleeping.
If you're a photographer, the first thing you should do in the morning is look out the window to the east for scenes like these. I know you're sleepy. It's dark out. But even if you're still in your pajamas and bare feet, get up and take a look at what you're missing by staying inside. Don't bother me with your sunrise, as you're saying. But the birds are out, the animals are out, and there's that gorgeous color of the sunrise. They're all good things to point your camera at. Photographers dive for the good light of morning. It's brilliant. So go out, for goodness sakes. Go out and take your sunrise pictures. You won't regret it.
Sometimes it's not caffeine you need to wake up and get out there and do some photography, but a big glass of water. Very refreshing. But beyond drinking a big glass of water, waterfalls can wake you up. In the next set of pictures, you'll see that I had to put in a great deal of effort to take these pictures of waterfalls at Ricketts Glen State Park in Pennsylvania. There are all sorts of waterfalls there, over 20. Some of the largest in the state. But you climb up a mountain and you see these waterfalls. So it involves a good deal more effort than just waking up. It involves hiking your butt off, sweating on a hot summer day, and then finally dragging your butt back down the mountain, back to your car, and going home and processing the photos. For that, photos of water, you'll need a big glass of water and more.
Waterfalls won't stop their water falling in most weather. They can freeze. They can dry up, but in most times they'll be flowing. Take advantage of that. It might take some effort to find or get to a waterfall, but it should be worth it. These photos were taken after a 3-hour drive from where I live to Ricketts Glen State Park. I closed off the aperture to f/22 on aperture priority, set the ISO to 100, and photographed when the waterfalls were in the shade so that the shutter speed was slow. If the light is bright, the shutter speed will be too fast to give that smooth, creamy look to the waterfall. Use a tripod so that you do not get shake in the photo with that slow shutter speed. Use manual focus, since the autofocus might change as the water moves. If you have a shutter release cable, use that so that the camera does not shake at all when you press the shutter release. Otherwise, use the timer if you have no shutter release cable, and set it to fire after a few seconds. If you get a shutter speed of 1 second or so, the water should look white and creamy. Continue your experiment to awaken your photographic vision with more water, with watercolors that is. Watercolors can snap you out of your doldrums too.
The camera can awaken your vision to photographs you didn't know you could take. In fact, they're not just photographs, they're works of art, even though you're not a watercolor artist. You'll have to use solid artistic technique as far as composition and exposure goes, but the watercolor choice and picture effects will enhance your vision and make you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about photography again.
Hit the road to make a watercolor. Even the road looks good. Then maybe you can find an old farm like this and turn it into a work of art. Look at these McMansions. Wouldn't a realtor like to have photos like this to sell the houses rather than the drab things he usually gets? Then go to your garden. Or you can go out into the woods and find many, many wildflowers to turn into watercolor works of art. Want to make some common geese look good? Try photographing them with watercolors. You'll get pictures you didn't know you could take. Then there's a hawk, just as menacing. And a robin, a harbinger of spring. He looks like a work of art, doesn't he? Whatever bird you'll find, watercolors will be able to enhance it. A horse looks at you warily, and you look warily at that snake in the leaves. But he's okay. He's a harmless garter snake, and he looks good as a watercolor. A simple reflection looks artistic as a watercolor, but just about any landscape will look that way. Even an old stump takes on a pretty look to it, doesn't it? Watercolors spring trees and a path. A stream. Streams are particularly interesting when you try to get artistic with a watercolor. Then again, the trees don't look too bad either. And finally, a trout lily tops off your artistic endeavor.
Bad light is no excuse if you stretch your creativity to the limit and search out subjects you wouldn't normally see. Find situations and compositions that are unusual and then show them to express how you feel when you find something unusual. Abstractions are everywhere in nature. You have only to look for the unusual, figure your exposure and creative style, expose in a creative way, and push the shutter release.
Find a beautiful park near you. It helps. This feather looks balanced on air, doesn't it? Actually, it's in a crack in a wood. Some wag put it there to give this effect. Even weeds can be gorgeous if you have a shallow depth of field and an interesting background. Elderly bicyclists riding off into the sunset. An ancient bridge and its interesting angles create good photos all along the way. A gnarled tree protecting a path. Reflections of a boat can be looked at in several different ways. An old stone wall will always give you something of interest to photograph. Real deer? No. They're statues, but they look good this way. A mourning dove is just as soft and pretty in black and white as it is in color. Then there are all these forms and textures just waiting for you and your camera to make something lovely even when the light is not good. Here's one of the most beautiful lights you'll find. Good night now.